The alien jungle hummed with an otherworldly melody, a sound that seemed to resonate with the very core of the planet. A symphony of bioluminescent life, each plant and creature contributing to the harmonious glow. Giant trees draped in luminous moss reached for the twin moons that hung in the sky like silent guardians. Their light cascaded down, painting the clearing in ethereal silver, creating a scene that felt almost magical. Waterfalls, fed by hidden springs, roared in the distance, their sound blending with the jungle's symphony. The air, thick with the scent of unknown blossoms, vibrated with unseen life, each breath a reminder of the planet's vitality. This was Xylos, a world of vibrant alien beauty teeming with life and mystery. The ground, soft and springy beneath his boots, pulsed with a life of its own, as if the planet itself was breathing. He crouched low, adjusting the oxygen regulator on his rugged suit, ensuring he could breathe in this alien atmosphere. His name was Kalen, an explorer from a dying Earth, seeking hope in the stars. He'd come to Xylos seeking a future, a chance. Instead he found magic, a world beyond his wildest dreams. He'd never seen anything like it. The colors, the light, the sheer alienness of it all, it took his breath away. The colors, the light, the sheer alienness of it all, it took his breath away, leaving him in awe of this new world. Kalen scanned the clearing, his hand hovering near the energy pistol at his hip, ready for any danger. He wasn't supposed to be here. This area was off limits, a forbidden zone. This area was forbidden, sacred to the Xylonians, the native inhabitants of this planet. But curiosity, that age-old human flaw, had drawn him in, compelling him to explore further. He'd heard whispers of this place, a sanctuary of light and life, a legend among explorers. He yearned to see it, to witness the beauty and mystery for himself. Now, bathed in its glow, he understood why. The sanctuary was more beautiful than he had ever imagined. A rustle in the undergrowth broke his reverie. Kalen froze, every sense on high alert, his heart pounding in his chest. He was out of his depth here, alone, vulnerable, in an environment he barely understood. He drew his pistol, the energy hum barely audible over the jungle symphony, ready to defend himself if needed. A shadow emerged from the ferns, tall and slender, moving with an eerie grace. Not a beast, but a being, something intelligent and aware. He stared, his finger loosening on the trigger, realizing he was not alone in this magical place. She stood bathed in moonlight, an ethereal vision, almost like a dream come to life. Her skin, the color of polished jade, shimmered under the soft glow of the moon. Intricate tattoos, glowing faintly, adorned her arms and face, telling stories of her lineage and heritage. Her eyes, large and luminous, held a hint of fear, but also a spark of curiosity, as if she was seeing something new and wondrous. She wore flowing robes of shimmering fabric, the mark of Xylonian royalty, a testament to her noble status.
Surprise, curiosity. A mix of emotions played across her face.
He lowered his weapon, instinctively knowing he meant no harm, hoping to convey his peaceful intentions. Her gaze met his, their eyes locking across the chasm of species and culture, bridging the gap between their worlds. He saw fear in her eyes, but also a flicker of something else, something he couldn't quite place. Recognition? He'd seen that same look in the eyes of the creatures he'd studied on Earth. A shared wonder, a recognition of life, a connection that transcended words. He knew he should leave, retreat back into the shadows, but something held him back. This was her world, her domain. He was an intruder, an outsider, yet he felt an inexplicable pull to stay. But something held him there, rooted to the spot, unable to move away. Maybe it was her eyes, or the way she moved with an almost unearthly grace, like a dancer in a dream. Or maybe it was something else, something deeper, pulling him towards her like a moth to a flame, an irresistible force. She spoke, her voice a melodious chime, like wind chimes in a summer breeze, soothing and enchanting. He didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear, filled with a gentle kindness. He raised his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace he'd learned from studying Xylonian customs, hoping it would be understood. He hoped it translated. He couldn't afford a misunderstanding. Not here, not now. This moment was too important. He watched her, his own heart pounding against his ribs. She tilted her head, studying him with those luminous eyes. He couldn't read the expression on her face, the subtle shifts of emotion alien to his human understanding. But he saw something in her gaze. Intrigue? He hoped so. He took a step forward, then hesitated. Was he overstepping? He didn't want to frighten her, but the need to be closer, to bridge the gap between them was overwhelming. He held out his hand, palm up, a universal gesture of peace. He hoped, at least, it was universal. She took a step back, her eyes widening slightly. He froze, his hand still outstretched. Rejection. He understood. He was an outsider, an intruder in her world. He lowered his hand, a wave of disappointment washing over him. But then, she did something unexpected.
Surprise, curiosity.
She raised her own hand, her slender fingers mimicking his gesture. Their hands met in the space between them, a touch light as a feather. He felt a jolt, a spark of energy, and he knew she felt it too. Section 4, The Weight of Worlds.
Her touch, though light, sent a tremor through him, a sensation that rippled through his very being.
It was a simple gesture, but in this alien landscape it felt monumental, as if the universe itself paused to witness. A connection forged across the vast gulf of stars and cultures, bridging the divide between their worlds. He looked into her eyes, seeking understanding, and for a moment he forgot where he was, who he was, lost in the depths of her gaze. There was only her, the alien princess with starlight in her eyes, a beacon in the darkness of the unknown. He knew their worlds were different, their people separated by a history he didn't fully comprehend, a history filled with conflict and mistrust. He'd read the reports, heard the stories of mistrust and misunderstanding, tales of ancient grievances and lost opportunities. The Xylonians were a solitary people, their history marked by conflicts with other starfaring races, a legacy of isolation and wariness. Humans, still new to the galactic stage, were viewed with suspicion, their motives questioned, their presence often unwelcome.
He knew the risks, the danger they were both in, the precariousness of their situation. If they were discovered, the consequences would be severe, potentially catastrophic for both of them. For him, perhaps exile, imprisonment, a life spent in the shadows of an alien world. For her, the stakes were even higher, the weight of her world pressing down on her shoulders. He'd heard rumors of ancient laws, of punishments meted out to those who consorted with outsiders, laws that were unforgiving and absolute. He couldn't bear the thought of bringing harm to her, to this creature of such grace and light whose very presence was a gift, and yet he couldn't bring himself to step away, the bond between them too strong to sever. The connection between them, forged in that brief touch, held him captive, a prisoner of their shared moment. He was drawn to her, to the mystery she embodied, to the alien beauty that surrounded her, a beauty that defied explanation. He was caught in her gravitational pull, a willing captive to the wonder of the unknown, to the promise of what could be.
Section 5, Stolen Moments, Forbidden Touches.
They met under the shimmering light of Xylos's moons. Stolen moments, snatched from the fabric of their vastly different lives. He, the explorer, charting the mysteries of her world. She, the princess, yearning for a glimpse beyond the confines of her gilded cage. He learned her name, Lyra, a melody as beautiful as the song of the bioluminescent birds that filled the night air.
She didn't speak his language, not in words he could understand, but they found other ways to communicate, gestures, expressions, the language of touch, hesitant at first, then bolder, more familiar. He showed her images of Earth on his datapad, marveling at the way her eyes widened at the sight of oceans and mountains, so different from the landscapes of Xylos. She, in turn, introduced him to the wonders of her world. She showed him plants that glowed with an inner light, their leaves unfurling at her touch. She took him to hidden waterfalls, their waters cascading down in sheets of liquid silver. Each stolen moment was a treasure, a precious jewel to be savored. But always, lurking in the shadows, was the knowledge that their time was limited, the weight of their forbidden love, a constant pressure on their chests. Section 6, Whispers in the Wind.
He told her about his world, his words clumsy attempts to bridge the chasm between their cultures. Earth, a world of fading green and rising oceans, a world on the brink, desperate for a new home. He spoke of his mission, the search for habitable planets, the hope that Xylos could be their salvation.
She listened, her head tilted, her eyes reflecting the shifting patterns of light from the glowing flora around them. He couldn't always decipher her expressions, the subtle nuances of her alien features, but he saw understanding in her eyes, a shared sense of wonder at the vastness of the universe and the fragility of life. Sometimes when the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of unknown blossoms, he imagined he could hear Xylo speaking to him, whispers of ancient wisdom, warnings about the dangers of interfering with forces beyond his comprehension. He knew his presence on this planet was a disruption, a ripple in the fabric of their existence. He knew he should leave, for her sake if not his own. But the thought of leaving Lyra, of abandoning the fragile connection they had forged, was unbearable. He was torn between his duty and his heart, between the survival of his people and the yearning for something he couldn't name.